Kevin Owens in the War Game style Survivor Series. That had a lot going on and a lot of heat and a really solid main event. The Bloodline go over in about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Really great match. And what are your initial thoughts on this one, Dom?
It's great to see War Games back. I remember War Games from years and years ago in the NWA, and we can get into some of the history of War Games and some of the swerves that happened in War Games matches. Tonight it was set up to be a swerve, but at the end it wasn't, and
It was a
it
swerve
was
of a swerve.
right. Everything was set up for Sami Zayn to be either the fall guy or the traitor.
Right.
And instead, I mean, boy, does Sami wrestle a great match. And he does it by being Sami Zayn. Like, he was so Sami in this match. Little things he was doing, but you know, Jey Uso gets the pinfall on Kevin Owens, with a lot of help from Sami Zayn. I mean, Sami, it looked like Kevin Owens was cleaning house there towards the end. But it's Sami who stops the ref from counting 3 on a fallen Roman Reigns after a KO stunner and pop-up powerbomb. Sami then starts the finishing sequence by low-blowing the best man at his wedding, Kevin Owens. We've got 2 of those in this match because we found out that Drew McIntyre was the best man at Sheamus's wedding a few SmackDowns ago. But yeah, his longtime friend, something they've been building to. You know, what's it going to be like when Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn meet face to face? And then, of course, with Kevin Owens sort of stunned there in the corner, Sami hits the penultimate finishing move, that big kick in the corner, that running kick right to the face in the corner. And then with Kevin Owens just prone in the middle of the ring, Sami looks at Jey and says, "You finish him off," and Jey with a big splash for the pinfall. And then, of course, at the end, Sami Zayn getting hugs from everybody. You know, maybe he's finally an Uce. You know,
yeah, I think Cole even mentioned it on the call. It's like he's just accepted by the group, and then the group's like freaking out, and it was a pretty cool moment because he was kind of like this comedy gimmick, and you could see like he's like freaking out in the middle of the ring, and the crowd really reacted to it. So the finish was fantastic.
You want to talk story or moves here, because it gets a little tough to follow, but like, what do you think you want to sink your teeth into first here with this main event?
You know, I think just maybe we'll go like my overall, what
Sure.
I think,
Go for
and
it.
then we can maybe kick it back to you for story. So just overall,
I'm still trying to get my thoughts together because I could go in either direction. So yeah, if you have something that you definitely want to go, I'll follow you. Yeah, man, go for it.
It's interesting because I've never seen. I've only seen maybe like one War Games match, so I was a little confused. Well, I should say I didn't really know the rules, so I was like, "What's going on here?"
Neither do most people.
As there's one guy in, he's in for 5 minutes, another guy in for 5 minutes. I'm like, can these guys pin each other or eliminate them? And then at the end, it all kind of dawned on me. Okay, it's like a war of attrition for some of these guys as they get thrown in the beginning.
Yes.
They get destroyed, and then once all competitors are in, then it goes live. Then the match starts.
Then you can actually win.
Yeah. So
you can win a battle before all 10 men are in, but you can't win the war until everybody's in.
Once I started to understand the rules, I liked it a bit better. I thought it kind of drug in the middle. But once the big guys were in, and that's like specifically Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, even Sheamus to maybe a lesser extent, definitely Drew McIntyre when he went in. So once you kind of got beyond the openers as they went in, the match started to boil a little bit more for me. Like I started to get more and more into it, and then the finish was so great that it was at least going to be a good match, regardless of what happened in the beginning, right? Because the finish was so great. How about you? You know, maybe we could stick with the storyline stuff. Any thoughts on the storyline here?
Storyline wise, they did such a great job. Excuse me, it's late here on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But hey, we wanted to do Survivor Series, and we did Survivor Series. Hey, it's our first pay-per-view after doing a bunch of SmackDowns. I got the tie on tonight. I am unaware, based on my lack of fashion sense, whether the snappy looking sport coat, the shirt, or the tie match with each other, clash with each other. Hey, leave us a comment here on Don't Bury the Leads. Tell me if I got it together here, or if this is just a mess, or if stuff. Are any two items of clothing working at all? Shout out to me. I need all the help I can get. But I tell you what I do have together, and that's pro wrestling. A match like this, it can get repetitive because guys are trying to wear each other down. Then a new guy comes in, and the new guy cleans house. And then somebody gets up and they start wearing down, and a new guy enters, and the new guy cleans house. And you saw a lot of that in this match. That aside, what was most interesting to me, and they did this brilliantly. My goodness, Jay and Butch start. By the way, Butch, when he was in NXT as Pete Dunn, this is his fourth War Games match, which is by far the most of any of the men's wrestlers tonight. So he knows this well. He and Jay were fantastic starting the match.
And
that's something you need. Because this match can be awkward early on because there's too much real estate. You got two rings there. And there's ropes in the middle because that's where the two rings are pushed together.
There's
and
two
so
rings.
It can be weird to look at. It can be weird to know what guys are supposed to do. But I mean, like you being newer to War Games, what do you think of that setup? And did that make it more awkward, or did you say, okay, this is cool? That this I could already see early on that this leads to more stuff.
I think that in the beginning, the opener, Pete Dunn. And the Uso brother really
Butch and Jay started.
Yeah, Butch, and I think he was Dunn before. But anyway, so
yep, that was Pete Dunn. He this is his fourth War Games. He did 3 in NXT.
So they did a great job with the opener, and they just went real slow, which is perfect because we're gonna have a ton of action. We're gonna have a lot of people come in. Don't do anything too nutty in the beginning. Don't grab a ton of tables and start smashing them. We're going to build to that at some point. So I think that they did a great job early on.
How about playing up the injured wrist? We talked that Jay may have been legitimately injured at Crown Jewel. It wasn't a fracture, but I don't know how real it is, but they're saying ligament damage in the right hand. And real or not, they've been playing that for a few weeks. And I thought they did a great job of playing that up today in the War Games match. And, Jay was selling it big time. And you could really see that when there were fewer guys in the ring.
One spot they did was really cool was the finger lock, where you grab their fingers and you just yank them back.
That's Butch's move.
That's nasty looking.
Yeah, that's the nastiest looking thing they do. Guys going through tables, nothing. But guys getting their fingers pulled, oh, geez.
Yeah, right. It's funny. Somebody gets smashed in through the table. You're like, okay, just table spot. But then just pulling someone's fingers back, you're like, oh, that definitely hurts. I know that hurts.
Yeah.
So it's like there's something gross about it. So that was a really good spot they did in the beginning. There was another guy, Ridge Holland, in this match.
Yes.
Who I thought really did well in the opener, the opening portion of the War Games match.
Yep. He was the third man in the match. First one after the original two entrants. The Brawling Brutes had the advantage, which means it's a staggered entry. So 2 guys start, then the team with the advantage gets to send an extra man down, then the team without the advantage gets to even it up, and then they keep doing that. One team gets an extra man, they even up until all 10 are in there. Ridge, who is Butch's tag team partner in the Brawling Brutes, he enters. And he looked good, and it didn't hurt that they were beating the crap out of one Jey Uso.
Right. And he looked good. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I kind of had like an interesting feeling about him, because a lot of these, I mean, all the guys in the matches have been in really big matches. They've been main card guys. Pete Dunn at least has been, I knew a lot of the stuff he's done. And this is really the first time I've really seen this guy do anything. And I would say of any sort of like main event status. So I had a feeling just for him, like I felt good for him. I'm like, this must be a pretty cool feeling to be in Boston, in their stadium, like in a great wrestling city, in a Survivor Series pay-per-view main event. So I was like, this is pretty cool for this dude.
Yeah, he was kind of the forgotten man of the Brawling Brutes, because I mean, Sheamus, obviously he's been a star for years.
Yeah.
And then Butch and Ridge were a tag team, and a pretty good tag team. But then Butch also got a singles push. He was most recently in the World Cup. I mean, for the shot at the Intercontinental title.
Yeah.
So Butch, the former Pete Dunn, he's got that pedigree as no pun intended with the move. Like he doesn't do his move, but he's got the pedigree as a singles wrestler. Mm. So he's getting more TV time, and Ridge is kind of always there in the background. So yeah, it was neat to see him get back in the ring and show what he can do. He's a stocky guy, powerful guy. They bill him as a former rugby player, which I get it. He looks like it. He looks like he could play some rugby. And it worked. And you mentioned that there weren't a lot of weapons until sort of later in the match, and you're right. I mean, even though weapons were kind of allowed throughout the match, there was just mano a mano, fisticuffs for a long time, and that was neat to see that they kind of introduced the foreign objects gradually and later. I'm with you there. What did you think about after Ridge enters, and I noticed, like you did, a lot of good double teams because they're a tag team, so that makes sense. That's logical. What do you think about the first extra man for the bloodline? And it's supposed to be Jimmy, and Roman holds him back and taps Sami. And now Sami, he's got to go to the ring. And this is unexpected for Sami. And so Sami really goes slow to the ring. And I mean, that was great for the psychology watching it, but it was also a brilliant move on Sami's part. Because while Ridge and Butch are just like gnawing at the cage, like they're trying to get out of it, you're watching for who's coming down the ring. They want to pounce on the guy. Sami slow playing it gives Jey a chance to get his bearings and recover a bit after being beaten down in the double team. And then Sami and Jey, the odd couple, versus a well-oiled tag team. What do you think seeing that?
Sami, so it was cool that they immediately kicked the storyline into it right away. That has been building throughout all the SmackDowns. And then another observation I kind of had was like, Sami Zayn was doing things that you almost think like, why don't people just do this? But when you're watching pro wrestling, like, why are they rushing to get into the ring? And there was a couple other spots in the match too. Like Sami Zayn low blowed Kevin Owens. It's like, it's no DQ. You should
no DQ.
Hitting people in the crotch all the time.
Not a lot of honor in that, but hey.
And then like he hit the ref when, what's his name? Kevin Owens did the stunner to Roman Reigns. Then he held the ref's arm because it's no DQ. You shouldn't hit the ref's arm. And then
he didn't beat up the ref, but he couldn't reach Kevin Owens to break up the pin, but he could reach the referee's arm. So he went for what was in reach.
Yeah. And then one spot you pointed out to me while we were in the studio together too was when he held the cage shut. right?
Hilarious.
Yeah. So
Just
it's like,
hilarious. Say, it was Sheamus trying to enter, and Sammy's over by the cage door, and he's holding the door shut.
right.
Like, no, you can't come in.
Which
It's
is,
like eventually Sheamus gets into the ring, but I mean, it's such a Sammy spot. Like, could you imagine Solo Sikoa doing that? No. The Usos, no. Roman, no. Nobody on the Brutes, no. But Sami Zayn, yeah, I can see Sami Zayn just like, no, I won't let you in.
yeah, he really shined tonight. He was great, and even taking some of the bumps. I think there was a belly to belly suplex that McIntyre did, and he launched him across the ring, Sami Zayn, and he went like basically turnbuckle to turnbuckle. Like he really launched him, so he got a lot of distance. So even taking the bumps,
Sammy sold everything tonight and sold it so well.
And you know what's crazy when you think of the bloodline and who they would feature here? You kind of figured Roman Reigns would just go in and wreck everybody and get the pin. That's what I kind of assumed because he's their big giant champ there. But it was really, an interesting move for them to kind of push. It was kind of the Sami Zayn show in the main event, and
it became that, and it started off with great wrestling and this Sammy thing hanging over everybody's heads. Then Sammy gets in there, and you think, okay, they're sort of working together. Sammy saves Jay early from a move by one of the Brutes, and says, and the camera was right on him, and the mic was there. He says, I got you. Trying to prove himself to Jay. And then they're working pretty well. As that segment of the match goes on, Jay and Sammy are working so well. Then Drew enters, starts cleaning house, but then Jay and Sammy, they kind of recover a bit by the time Jimmy gets into the ring, and now it's 3-on-3, and Jimmy brings in tables. But now that Jimmy's in the ring, Sammy sort of gets pushed aside by Jay. Like, I was only working with you because I had to. Now that Jimmy's here, like, get out of the way and let the real tag team champs, let the real stars handle business. And Jimmy was kind of taken aback, like, hey, this is 5-on-5. It seemed like Jimmy was, hey, if he's working with us, we got to use him. We can't, you can't go 5-on-4. So that was interesting. How about Sammy not only selling everything that the Brutes were doing to him, but how about when Butch ducks and Jey Uso catches Sammy flush with that super kick? How about that Sami Zayn sell on the friendly fire super kick?
The crowd went crazy. They were booing. That was the first time, and one of the things I've noticed was the faces were working heel the whole time with the finger locks and all that.
Yeah, you're right.
And the heels, which is the bloodline, were kind of working babyface, or actually were at least getting cheered. But that was the first time the bloodline got booed when they did the super kick and hit Sami Zayn. They were like, that was the first boo to the bloodline.
But, that's what it took to get the crowd riled up.
Yes. So that was a great spot, and that was continue to build that storyline throughout the whole match with the Sami Zayn, and will they turn, or will he turn on the Usos?
Now let's talk about this for just a second here. We've discussed before a lot of these gimmick matches, especially when there's so many wrestlers in them, that it becomes difficult to book and to get any sort of decent looking finish out of it, because you've got to find a way to incapacitate everybody else except maybe 2 guys or 3 guys. As War Games goes on, it seems to me that a lot of guys just fall down and don't get up again over things that they would have gotten up again from in a regular match. like a regular pay-per-view match, guys aren't just lying on the ring for 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Which it seemed like. And by the end of this match, everybody's just lying around except Sami, Kevin Owens, and eventually Jey Uso. Even Roman is like struggling. Like he would have, if this were a regular match, Roman would have popped up. I mean, not right away, but he would have been up.
Yeah. I mean,
sooner than that. And that seems to be the way that they finish these War Games matches. They say, look, it's been grueling on everybody. They've been in there for so long that, you know, when guys get knocked down, they're just going to kind of stay there. And that's how we're going to create some space. But I mean, does that work for you or not?
So, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and say this. There were certain points. So go ahead and say this is usually that's my intro for like, I'm going to say something not so nice. There were certain points during the match where I was like, this just feels like guys kind of randomly doing moves. There was like 6 or 7 people in the ring, and you'd have like one guy just do a move to another guy, and then like everybody just sort of laying around in the corners and in the side. And it kind of was messy in the middle. And that's the only way I could describe it. It was just like a big mess of bodies and then like punches, move. Okay, punches, move. Like there wasn't a lot of synergy between the guys in there. And it was just because like
and not a lot of sequences really. I mean, there were some, but
so that was my only beef with it. But I also don't know how you would kind of have some cohesive. I mean, it must be really difficult. Some cohesive spot between 6, 7 guys.
I'm with you on that. I think it's a case of, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You've got 10 guys in the ring. You can't have the crowd focused on all 10 guys. You know, you've got to find a way to narrow down people's attention. Because I mean, the eventually it's going to come down to 2 guys. You know, there's a pinfall or a submission. You know, it's 2 guys, maybe 3, maybe 4. I mean, but it can't be 10. So, you know, the thing that you're saying, in a regular match, they probably would have gotten up from that. In this kind of match, yeah, stay down. Let the crowd focus on what they're supposed to focus on. Let the camera, the not only the hard camera, but the inside camera work. Let them focus on what the viewing audience at home is supposed to see. And, you know, I thought the finish was fantastic. Excuse me. It was only afterwards that I realized some of these guys have just been lying around for 10 minutes. So, you know, I kind of put that out of my mind. You know, that was no longer relevant to me. And I watched the finish and enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think it was still a really good match, and I think it was deserving of the main event, and it was heavy storyline. There weren't like amazing spots, but the storyline that they kind of built up from all the different SmackDowns we've watched, building into this, and then to have it go down like it did was like totally delivered.
And before we leave, I mean, I mentioned before, War Games has a history of swerves. 1996, WCW used to run War Games at Fall Brawl. 1996 was the NWO versus WCW. The NWO had formed earlier that year. And, of course, the NWO's 4th man was Sting, except it wasn't. It was a fake Sting. Because the last guy to enter from the back, they didn't do cages out front. From the back for the WCW team was the real Sting, who came in, cleaned house, got pissed at everybody for thinking he had turned on them, and just left the ring. And the NWO wound up winning. And that was really the end of that Sting character. Like, that was the end of it. And then the next year, War Games was Kurt Hennig turning on the 4 Horsemen and joining the NWO, and, you know, Flair getting his head slammed in the cage door.
Okay.
So and War Games, especially towards the end there, were known for for shocking turns, and so I got to tell you, I'm glad WWE did not go there tonight.
Yeah.
I thought this was a fantastic storyline, and I thought everybody in the ring just played the part so well. This was entertaining.
It was a swerve of a swerve, right?
Yep.
Like, we thought the swerve was coming. And it was, I mean, like, they really leaned into it.
Which tells you that it's not.
Right. They leaned into it just a bit too much, and then, no. Sometimes they make it really obvious, and that's okay, too. But it was like, okay.
Well, that's what keeps you guessing. But, like, it's the kind of thing, like, once it's over, you look back and you say, oh, of course it went that way.
Yeah.
Of course Sami is true to the bloodline. It was a swerve of a swerve. He was playing Kevin Owens the whole time. Right. But if he had turned on him, he'd been like, of course Sami turned on them. Didn't you see it? Yes, and really that's good storytelling. When it could go either way, and you just kind of sit back and say, all right, I'm gonna let myself watch the match and be entertained and just see if it's executed well. I'm not going to judge it based on whether I guessed it. I'm going to judge it based on whether the story is told well and presented well by the performers. And for that, I got to say this main event delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like one more thing about the main event.
Sure.
And this is just like random spots I noticed.
Okay.
People love counting. So when they did the spot where they had basically Sheamus's move, I don't know what it's called, but he punches the guys in the chest and they're
yes.
the ropes. But when all 5 guys were doing that and they were doing the count, the crowd was just sucked into it. And they're like, 1, 2, 3. They love it. So if you it's pretty simple. If you want to get over as a babyface pro wrestler, find something the crowd can count. And then they will love it,
Or do with it. And that's that's another great point to maybe kind of wrap up our talk of the main event on, is there were all the things you would expect in not a War Games match, but that were chances for the crowd to kind of get involved. The live crowd. We've talked about how great it is when the live crowd is into the match. And there were some times tonight when the live crowd was not into the matches, some of these other matches. But the live crowd was into this main event. They were counting along. I'm glad the Boston crowd could count that high. Will wonders never see? I love you, Boston. Come on, it's a joke. Tell me in the comments, did you like that joke or not? But they're doing the ooh ah with Roman and everything else. The crowd had their moments to get into the match without being smarts. The crowd said the times when you bring the crowd in are best when you bring them in as part of the show, not as guys who are too cool for the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Or just trying to crap on it. Like, so yeah, I mean, they did the details in this match. And I think that was because the in-ring stuff was it was all right, but it was everything else that made the main event so good. Wasn't this better than the old Survivor Series where guys were just thrown together and you scratched your head and said, why are these guys on a team? Like, because we talked about this in past SmackDowns, that this kind of makes sense that this would be why you bring back War Games. And it makes sense that these are the teams.
The big pull was Kevin Owens and having that be the focal point, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I didn't even think about that. But then why are you with these guys? And then he low blows them. And then they're like, yeah, all right, we low blow him. You like he low blows his best friend. And just like, I'm an Uce now. So,
but everybody had a reason to be in this match other than we need to fill out the roster.
Yes, right. Other than
for bringing back War Games at a WWE major pay-per-view, cheers to WWE for doing it right. You didn't just throw 5 guys in there to say, hey, we want to have War Games. Like, you saved War Games for what War Games was meant for. which was lots of guys who have heat with each other, long-standing heat. That's when it works best. And it delivered for a multitude of reasons. I like